A man staggers into an emergency room with 2 black eyes and a 5-iron wrapped tightly around his throat. Naturally, the doctor asks him what happened. "Well, it was like this," said the man. "I was having a quiet round of golf with my wife when she sliced her ball into a pasture of cows. We went to look for it, and while I was rooting around, I noticed one of the cows had something white at its rear end. I walked over and lifted up the tail, and sure enough, there was my wife's golf ball, stuck right in the middle of the cow's b. That's when I made my mistake." "What did you do?" asks the doctor. "Well, I lifted the tail and yelled to my wife, 'Hey, this looks like yours.'" Charlie was installing a new door when he realized one of the hinges was missing. He turned to his wife, Mary, and asked, "Honey, can you run to Home Depot and grab a hinge?" Mary agreed and headed to the store. While waiting for the manager to finish helping another customer, her eyes wandered and landed on a gorgeous bathroom faucet. "Wow," she thought, "that would look amazing in our bathroom." When the manager was free, she asked, "How much is that faucet?" "That one's gold-plated," the manager replied. "It's $500. Mary's eyes widened. $500? That's way out of my budget. Shaking off the temptation, she described the hinge Charlie needed. The manager nodded and disappeared into the storeroom to grab one. From the back, his voice rang out. "Ma'am, do you want a for the hinge?" Mary paused, then called back. "No, but I will for the faucet." The owner of a golf course was struggling with a bill, so he turned to his blonde secretary for some quick math help. "If I gave you $20,000 and took off 14%, how much would you take off?" he asked. She thought for a moment and replied, "Everything but my earrings." Lulu was a prostitute, but she didn't want her grandma to know. One day, the police raided the brothel and took all the girls outside and made them line up. Suddenly, Lulu's grandma came by. Grandma asked, "Why are you standing in line here, dear?" Not willing to let her grandma know the truth, Lulu told her that the police were passing out free oranges and she was just lining up for some. "Why, that's awfully nice of them. I think I'll get some for myself," Grandma said, and she proceeded to the back of the line. A policeman was going down the line, asking for information from all. When he got to Grandma, he was bewildered and exclaimed, "Wow, still going at it at your age? How do you do it, old girl?" Grandma replied, "Oh, it's easy, dear. I just take my dentures out, rip the skin back and dry." The policeman fainted. A guy moves into a new apartment in New York and heads to the lobby to put his name on the mailbox. As he's doing so, a stunning young woman steps out of the apartment next to the mailboxes wearing nothing but a robe. She flashes him a warm smile and strikes up a conversation. As they chat, her robe slowly slips open, revealing that she's wearing absolutely nothing underneath. The poor guy starts sweating bullets, struggling to keep eye contact. After a few minutes, she gently places a hand on his arm and whispers, "Let's go inside. I hear someone coming." Without hesitation, he follows her into the apartment. She closes the door, leans against it, and, with a sultry look, lets the robe fall completely open. "Tell me," she purrs, "what would you say is my best feature?" The guy, now a nervous wreck, stammers, clears his throat, and finally blurts out, your ears." She looks absolutely baffled. "My ears? Look at these perky, natural, no sag. My firm, flawless, zero cellulite. My skin, perfect, no blemishes. Out of everything, why would you say my ears?" Still flustered, he clears his throat again and mutters, "Because when you said you heard someone coming, That was me. After driving for about 16 hours, a truck driver decides to pull over and get some sleep. Just as he falls asleep, he is awakened by a knock at the cab door. "Can you tell me the time, please?" asks a jogger. "Yes, it's 4:30, the trucker replies. He falls asleep again, only to be awakened by another jogger who wants to know the time. "It's 4:40, shouts the trucker. Deciding to try to get some sleep, he writes on a piece of paper, "I don't know the time," and sticks it on the windshield. But he wakes up again. "It's 5:25, another runner shouts at him. A man walks into a bank and approaches the teller. "I want to open a account in this bank," he says. Shocked, the teller responds, "Sir, we don't tolerate that kind of language here." She quickly steps away and explains the situation to her manager. The manager, understanding the issue, decides to handle it personally. Walking up to the man, the manager asks, "Sir, is there a problem?" The man replies, "No problem at all. I just won $200 million in the lottery, and I want to deposit my money in this bank." The manager's eyes widened. "Ah, I see. And is this lady giving you a hard time, sir?" 2 Canadians die and end up in The devil decides to pay them a visit, so he walks into their room and sees them talking and laughing. Confused, he asks them why they're happy. They tell him, "Well, we're so sick of the cold where we're from, and this place is nice and toasty." The devil, annoyed, storms away and goes to boiler room, where he turns up the temperature. He goes back to the Canadian's room, along the way being begged by all sorts of people to put the heating back down. He enters the room to see the Canadians having a barbecue. Furiously, he asks them what they're doing. "Well, we can't pass up this wonderful weather without getting out the barbecue." The devil realizes he's been doing the wrong thing. He goes to the boiler room and turns it down until it's at a colder temperature than ever seen on Earth. He knows he's won now, so he goes back to the Canadians' room, only to see them jumping up and down in excitement. He shouts at them in fury, "Why are you still happy?" They look at him and shout at the same time. Froze over. "That means the Leafs won." Me and a couple of the guys were having beer and laughing about how stupid our wives are. Ted said, "Mine's the stupidest." She goes out shopping and she comes back with a pair of jodhpurs and a riding crop. And she's never been on a horse in her life. Jack said, "Mine's stupider than that. She goes out shopping and she comes back with a sailor's jersey and cap and a pair of deck shoes, and she's never even seen a boat." But I had them beat. I cracked open another cold one, and I said, "Yeah, well, mine dropped her purse and it fell open. And I saw a couple of packets of condoms in there, and she ain't got a A new boss was setting up his computer, and his secretary was assisting him with the process. As she reached the part where he needed to choose a password, she asked, "What word would you like to use?" With a mischievous grin, and wanting to tease her a bit, he smugly replied, "Type in p." Without hesitation, she entered the word as instructed, remaining completely professional. Moments later, the computer displayed its response. "Password rejected, not long enough." The secretary burst out laughing, leaving her boss red-faced and speechless. Teacher: "All right, class, what's something that starts off hard and pink but after a little while turns soft and sticky. But before he could say a word, little Johnny confidently blurted out, "Bubblegum, duh!" One sunny afternoon, Dolly and Ruby, two longtime friends, sat together in a cozy cafe, sipping their tea and chatting about their favourite topic, grandchildren. Dolly sighed, shaking her head. "You know, every year I send each of my grandchildren a card for their birthday. Inside, I always put a very generous check. But you know what? I never hear from them. No calls, no texts, no thank you notes, nothing." Ruby, her eyes twinkling mischievously, nodded. "Oh, I know exactly what you mean. I send my grandchildren generous checks too, every year." Dolly looked surprised. "Really? Do you hear back from them?" "Of course," Ruby replied with a grin. "Within a week, I get phone calls, messages, and even personal visits. They come right to my door. All smiles and politeness." Dolly leaned forward, intrigued. "Wow, how on earth do you manage that?" Ruby chuckled softly and leaned in closer. "Oh, it's easy," she said. "I just don't sign the check." Dolly's eyes widened, and then she burst into laughter, realizing her friend's clever trick. Sometimes a little strategy goes a long way. The doctor enters the room and says, "Ah, I see you're awake." Now, you probably don't remember, but you were in a massive freeway pileup. The good news is you're going to be fine. You'll walk again and everything. However, well, your manhood was severed in the accident, and we couldn't recover it. Moshe groans in horror, but the doctor continues. Now, before you panic, there's hope. Your insurance covers a $9,000 payout, and thanks to modern medical advancements, we can build you a brand new one. They function perfectly, but they don't come cheap. It's about $1,000 per inch. Moshe sits up, suddenly very interested. The doctor nods and says, "Now, here's the thing. You've been married for over 30 years, so this is a decision you should discuss with your wife. If you had 5 inches before and upgrade to 9, she might have concerns. If you had 9 and only go for 5, she might be disappointed. Best to let her weigh in." Moshe agrees and talks it over with his wife, Zelda. The next day, the doctor returns. "So, did you discuss it with your wife?" "Yes, I did," Moshe says. "And? What did you decide?" Moshe sighs. "We're getting granite countertops." A woman comes home beaming and tells her husband, "Guess what? Those headaches I've had for years, gone." Her husband, surprised, asks, "No more headaches? What happened?" She grins. "Margie sent me to a hypnotist. He told me to stand in front of a mirror and repeat 3 times. I do not have a headache. I do not have a headache. I do not have a headache." And poof, they vanished. Her husband nods. "That's amazing." Then she adds, "You know, you haven't exactly been a wild stallion in the bedroom lately. Maybe the hypnotist can help with that too." Intrigued, he agrees and books an appointment. That evening, he bursts through the door, rips off his clothes, sweeps his wife into his arms and carries her to the bedroom. "Don't move. I'll be right back," he says, rushing into the bathroom. Moments later, he returns, jumps into bed, and gives his wife the most mind-blowing night of her life. Breathless, she gasps, "Wow, that was incredible." Her husband winks. "Don't move. I'll be right back." Off to the bathroom he goes again. Round 2? Even better. She's dizzy, amazed. Again, he says, "Don't move, I'll be right back." This time, curiosity gets the best of her. She tiptoes after him, peeks into the bathroom, and there he is, staring at the mirror, chanting, "She's not my wife. She's not my wife. She's not my wife." A young couple took their 3-year-old son to see Dr. Cohen. Hesitantly, they explained that while their little angel seemed perfectly healthy, they were a bit concerned about his rather small Mickey. After a quick examination, the doctor nodded confidently. "No problem, just feed him bagels with cream cheese. That should do the trick." The next morning, the boy came to the breakfast table and saw a huge stack of warm bagels piled high with cream cheese. "Wow, Mom," he exclaimed. "Are these all for me?" His mother smiled and said, "Take 2, sweetie. The rest are for your father." 2 hikers were trekking through central Pennsylvania when they stumbled upon a 6-foot-wide hole in the ground. "Must be an old air shaft from a coal mine," one mused. Curious about its depth, the first hiker grabbed a rock and tossed it in. They listened. Nothing. The second hiker picked up a bigger rock and threw it in. Again, silence. Determined to get an answer, they found an old railroad tie, dragged it to the edge and heaved it into the hole. Seconds later, out of nowhere, a dog came sprinting between them and leaped straight into the hole. Stunned, the hikers just stared at each other. What just happened? A few moments later, a young boy wandered up and asked, "Hey, have you guys seen my dog around here?" The hikers exchanged awkward glances. We just saw a dog jump into this hole." The boy chuckled. "Nah, that couldn't be my dog. My dog was tied to a railroad tie." Ethan had a peculiar weakness for quirky gadgets, much to the dismay of his wife, Sophia, who had long given up on curbing his impulsive purchases. One evening, he strutted into their living room with a grin, wheeling in his latest find, a sleek humanoid robot. "Meet Maximus 3000, Ethan announced proudly. "It's a state-of-the-art lie detector." Sophia rolled her eyes, but said nothing. The real test, she thought, would come soon enough. At around 5:30 p.m., their 12-year-old daughter, Chloe, strolled into the house, over 2 hours past her usual time. "Chloe," Ethan said sharply, "why are you so late?" Chloe hesitated briefly, then replied, "I stayed after school with some friends to rehearse for the school play." Without a word, Maximus, word to life, marched over to Chloe and smacked her hard enough to knock her off the couch. Ethan raised an eyebrow. "Chloe, Maximus can detect lies." "Try again. Where were you?" Blushing, Chloe admitted. "Okay, fine. We went to Lily's house and hung out." "And what were you doing at Lily's?" Sophia pressed, suspicious. We studied for a quiz," Chloe stammered. Maximus sprang into action again, delivering another slap that sent Chloe reeling. Sobbing, she climbed back up. "All right, we watched Midnight Desires. I'm sorry." Ethan shook his head in disappointment. "Chloe, I can't believe this. When I was your age, I never lied to my parents." No sooner had the words left his mouth than Maximus pivoted, zeroed in on Ethan, and landed a slap that nearly sent him over the coffee table. Sophia doubled her over with laughter. "Oh, Ethan," she said through tears, "you had that coming. You have got no room to lecture her. She's your daughter, after all." Before Sophia could finish, Maximus turned, whirred ominously, and delivered a smack that left her sprawled on the floor. From his corner of the room, Ethan muttered, "Maybe Maximus came with a return policy." 2 blondes were working on a house. One of them was nailing down siding. She'd reach into her nail pouch, pull out a nail, and either hammer it in or toss it over her shoulder. The other blonde, curious, finally asked, "Why do you keep throwing some of those nails away?" The first one replied, "Well, if I pull out a nail and it's pointed toward me, I toss it. Obviously, it's defective. But if it's pointed toward the house, I nail it in." The second blonde smacked her forehead and shouted, "You idiot! The ones pointed toward you aren't defective. They're for the other side of the house." A stranded traveller found himself in a bit of a pickle when his car veered into a ditch in a remote area. Just as despair began to set in, a local farmer appeared, leading his powerful horse, Buddy. The farmer calmly hitched Buddy to the car and shouted, "Pull, Nelly, pull!" Buddy stood still. Undeterred, the farmer bellowed, "Pull, Buster, pull!" Buddy didn't budge. Again, the farmer cried, "Pull, Coco, pull!" Still, no movement. Finally, the farmer casually called out, "Pull, Buddy, pull!" With that, Buddy leaned into the harness and effortlessly hauled the car from the ditch. Grateful and intrigued, the traveller turned to the farmer. "Thank you, but I have to ask, why did you call Buddy by all those other names first?" The farmer chuckled and said, "Well, you see, Buddy's blind. If he thought he was pulling all on his own, he wouldn't even try." After a long and exhausting day, a young woman finally settled into her seat on the train, hoping for a peaceful ride home. She closed her eyes, ready to drift into some much-needed rest. But her hopes were quickly dashed by the man sitting next to her, who whipped out his phone and began speaking loudly enough for the entire train car to hear. "Hi, sweetheart. It's John. I'm on the train," he announced. "Yes, I know it's 6:30, not 4:30, but I had a long meeting." "No, honey, I wasn't with Kathy from accounts. I was with the boss, I swear. You're the only one in my life. Yes, I'm sure, dear." For a solid 15 minutes, the conversation dragged on, his voice dominating the space and testing the patience of everyone around him. Finally, the young woman had enough. She leaned in close to him, then spoke loudly into his phone. "John, darling, hang up and come back to bed already." The train car erupted into laughter, and John's face turned bright red. He hung up instantly. And from that day on, John never made another loud phone call in public.